Hello, Darkling lovers, card slingers, pagan aficionados, whatnot. I'm back. It's been a little while since I've been here. There's been kind of a lot going on. Mostly, I have been. This is the time of year, starting in early November, that we have a lot of things to do, like birthdays, holiday travel. We actually did Iceland last week. We take a major holiday every other to 3 years. Um, so it isn't something we do all the time, but we do some travel. Uh, Sometimes it's just somewhere in the US, and sometimes, like this time, we found a really great deal, so we were able to go to Iceland. And this is my first trip where I actually went to a country that was not near the like on the Americas. So, I was within hours of Ireland and England and all those wonderful places on in the old world, as I tend to think of it. Um, had a really awesome time, but due to my wheat sensitivity, I ate a little bit too much food that I shouldn't have. And so, between the time difference, which is 8 hours ahead of the West Coast, it is 8 hours ahead of us. And so our sleep schedule right now is really screwed up. And I, since we got back, we've just kind of been limping along, trying to eat whatever food we had in the house and just getting a little bit of this and that. Yesterday was and the day before was the two real shopping days we did since we've been back, because we were just sleeping all the time and trying to recover from the travel, which was a 7 hour flight, plus totally different time zone type situation. And my boys are we're still all wigged out sleep wise. We're still barely catching up over here. So, yeah, really awesome experience. Having 5 hours of sunlight a day was like, wow. I loved it in some ways because I am a night person. I feel more energized when I'm not combating sunlight. Because sensory wise, I have light sensitivity, a lot of physical touching type sensory issues, some of them positive, lots of them negative. And then sound sensitivity. Yeah, I'm sensory defensive, I guess you could say. I'm not hyposensitive. I'm very high sensitivity, so I believe they call that sensory defensive. Um, and with needing to change my eating style and getting used to constantly keeping an eye out for as no wheat or very little wheat as possible. I really notice when I have a large amount of wheat in a meal because my joints literally ache. I didn't realize how much joint pain was from what I was eating until I've been doing this. I had been cautious of whole wheats for a long time. I had been not eating whole wheat because literally my digestion would start shutting down if I was having too much of that. And I eat only certain types of dairy, but I do tend to do a lot of like almond milk, plant milks, and stuff like that instead. So all this stuff has been a factor since early November. And so I haven't been putting out as much videos, and I'm sorry for that, but I've been really fighting to get more mentally focused and not be in. You don't know how much you crave not being achy and not being in pain until you're not in pain, and then it starts up again every time you eat something. To put it simply, to put it as simply as I can. Um, so, uh, I'm really I had intended, I tried not to buy any oracles and things, and one of my strategies was I brought with me my Oracle of the Unicorns. It has some really cool background scenes on some of the cards that have the Northern Lights in it, or the Aurora Borealis. Matter of fact, let me just find one. Okay, here's one that's kind of similar to the covers. And that is literally what it does look like. Very similar to that. A lot of greens in the night lights. One of the nights we were out looking at the nights there for the Northern Lights, it was present, but you could only see it through the cameras. And then my husband proceeded to go, I think, 3 more nights, because a major part of the trip was seeing the Northern Lights. We had wanted to do it in Alaska. Sorry, I was trying to find. Oh, here's another one that has Northern Lights in the background. So I brought this deck with. A major trip that we did before was going to Alaska, but we were never in a location far enough north to see the Northern Lights during the 2 times we went. My sister lives up in Alaska, so one time we went in September to see her, and then we went on a cruise that went to different spots in Alaska, but again, we didn't go to places far north enough to be able to see the Northern Lights. But we did have a really awesome time, so what can you do? Well, what we did was we found a really great Groupon deal, which made it so that we could go to Iceland last week. And it gave us huge discounts on travel and on a place to stay. And boy, did we have quite a bit of sticker shock or price shock, because it is a high living expense just for food, let alone items over in Iceland. So if you go, be prepared for that, because even though you can get some really great deals on accommodation and travel, you're going to get offset by how much it costs to eat. I would very much advise, if you're going to Iceland, to try to get someplace, if you get a hotel, get one that offers breakfast, because the one we went to did breakfast up until 11:30, so you could technically go in really early, have breakfast, and then go right towards, say, that last hour, and get like an early lunch on the similar type of food, so that you don't have to shop as much or go out as much to eat while you're in Iceland. If you get like a bed and breakfast or some kind of other thing, shop and really, do what you can to cut down on eating out as much as possible. The different foods we had were really cool. They have, and if you're from the U.S., you'll be happy to know there's Kentucky Fried Chicken, Domino's Pizza, a Quiznos, Subway. So if you're looking for American food up there, you'll find it, but they also have lots and lots of local options and cool things to try out. The pricing's a little bit hairy, but just be ready for that if you do go to Iceland. So on a more positive note, I got to learn about the Yule Lads, which is a tradition that they carry for about, I think they said 14 days. We were there, the tail end of our trip was during the first couple days of the Yule Lads, or the first day of the Yule Lad visits up into Christmas or Yule. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which they do it to. I think Christmas. But Iceland went, I guess they would say, nationally Christian, early 1900, or the first year of 1900s. And that was by they do this thing where two sides will ask a third party person, a neutral person, or someone that they both trust, to make a decision on something that many people care about when they're at odds with each other. And this guy that they chose for it, he was actually a pagan, but he said, let's go Christian, but privately people can do it as they wish, as long as they're not very vocal about it. Keep it behind closed doors otherwise. So there may be a lot of listed Christians, but they may also have pagan practices they keep in their home or family, and that they're not very vocal about or active outside the home with. I found that interesting. So the Yule Lads, totally loved that. My boys thought they were hilarious. They have different names like Door Slammer and Goat something or other Kicker or something like that. It was really funny. And then they have the tradition that each night, when the Yule Lads are going through, or are supposed to come and visit or whatever, you put your shoe out on the ledge, and you either get a treat or a small toy or a potato. And the potato could either be an edible one or a very rotten one, depending on how naughty you were. So take it as you will. That was one of the traditions I thought was really awesome that we found out while we were there. And we also learned about I had known about the Yule Cat, but I found out I knew about a more current version of it that they kind of niced up for the Christian children. It's actually a little bit more scarier, but we found out more about the traditions that they actually carry through or share more with the children now, and that's the one about um, well, there was quite a bit about it, and I don't want to say it wrong, but I would look up the Yule Cat. They have some books that they print up there about it, some really cool picture books. They call them the Christmas Cat up there. I heard Yule Cat as well. Their National History Museum, or whatever they call it, had Yule Cats placed at different exhibits on the different floors, and they gave a bit of information about the Yule Cat there as well. So you might want to look on their website to see if they had anything on there, but they did have little paper. Oh, I might even have a copy still of the little scavenger hunt, which was basically just finding the different Yule Cats, little Yule Cat ornaments that they had placed around the different displays through the museum, and it was a lot of fun looking for it. We took pictures of all of them. I think we found all of them, and one of them is a scary looking Yule Cat, and the Yule Cat is kind of a scary creature. How I understand the story, which is the more prettied up version, is that the Yule Cat comes around this time of year, and if you have not been very involved or connected to your family and community, you probably won't be gifted clothing, an outfit, socks, mittens, or something, even, a hat or something. If you're not gifted something, being acknowledged as part of the community, the Yule Cat will tear at you or rip up your old clothes and things like that. But if you are gifted a clothing item, or even a whole new outfit, the Yule Cat will leave you alone. Won't come tearing at you and terrorizing your dreams and stuff like that. So the older version was actually quite a bit scarier from the vague acknowledgement I got from some locals. He would come and literally bite people, tear at you, torment you if you were not exemplary or not a very good person. And I think there is a lot more to the story, but I kept just finding the more current version of the Yule Cat stories, so I'm going to be looking that up because I also enjoy the Krampus idea, and I've been kind of my kids don't really believe in Santa as a thing now, but they do understand that Santa did exist. He was alive at one point. But I also told them that Santa is kind of a mesh of a lot of different beliefs and beings. And so we've taken on honoring that generosity and goodness of the Santa or Saint Nick idea. We also talk about the Holly King. We talk about the Horn God. We talk about the shamans in those really far countries that wore the red and white shamanic clothing. We talk about where these symbolism things came from that apply to the season and stuff. So yeah, getting to expand on understanding the Yule traditions springing from our Northern European ancestors and the Icelandic people was really awesome. The Saga Museum it's very well known as a major sightseeing thing to go check out, and I totally agree. It was one of the best things we saw locally, and I really enjoyed the well. I forget what it's called, but it's basically this huge warehouse with these whales, life-size models, full models of whales, not just like murals and pictures with like measurements of saying how big they should be, but literally life-size models hanging and in touching distances in many cases. Just fantastic display and center to be able to explore whales. I would recommend that one. There's a lot of interactive stuff at that the Icelandic Whale Center or whatever it was called. And the Saga Museum is almost within, if not walking distance, it's very close to that area. And we enjoyed those very much. The Blue Lagoon was nice and warm and wet. I even tried some of the white mud. It felt so good. I found it a bit exhausting because I got ditched with the kids by myself. Me and the kids were by ourselves. We lost half our party, and that was a bit frustrating because I had to drag them along. And then we finally decided we didn't want to look for anybody anymore. Yeah, so a really cool time. Really enjoyed another experience with the dark time of the year through a week in Iceland, which is 5 hours of daylight. The rest of it's all dark. And we even went into did a little cave exploring in a dormant lava tube, and that was very stressful, but a really awesome experience as well. As I have a bit of an issue with tight spaces, mostly just a concern of being stuck somewhere and not being able to get out. After you get past that part, I'm cool. I don't have a problem with the dark. It's nothing like that. It's more about getting stuck places because I'm a chubby girl. I also have a little bit of claustrophobia, so it's like I don't like getting in elevators when there's too many people. I don't like feeling crowded. I know that's partially sensory, partially past experiences and some other issues there, but it actually was really cool. And we had a very awesome patient guide. And I just kept myself toward the back of the pack, so I wasn't keeping the other cave explorers that were with us from enjoying their time, because it isn't their issue if I'm having issues, right? They should be able to have their time and enjoy it, and not me not wrecking on their parade. So, yeah, aside for a bit of a panic attack, because by the time we had already been in Iceland 4 days, maybe 5, and our sleep schedule was really messed up at that point. It still is. We were at that point where we were kind of getting used to being on a very different sleep schedule. But I had been playing tag with the kids on who was taking care of them, who was up with them or going to sleep, and it was just very exhausting in that sense. And then I read that we were going in this cave. In some places you have to crawl through certain sections, and my anxiety just shot up through the roof, and I had a full-blown panic attack within minutes of reading this paragraph about the caves. And I ended up having to send my son to get one of the other adults in our group to help me. I use this supplement called TrueCalm, which helps it basically helps get you to like a steady level. And I still had to go through the panic attack. There's not much you can do when a panic attack is gotten rolling. You just got to go through it. But I knew that if I took the supplement, that it would help me calm down and not keep having anxiety / panic attacks, which are similar but two different levels of attacks. Anxiety, there's usually a buildup. You know what started it. Panic attack can kind of piggyback anxiety attacks because it's a buildup of stress that finally hits, and then it could be about anything. You could even be having a bunch of positive stress and then get a full-blown panic attack. So yeah, it was just a combination, I think, of literally fatigue and then excessive stress. So yeah, a really cool experience, but very stressful because of how tiring it was mentally. And I don't regret any of it. It was really cool. The other thing that happened, and I think I talked about, but I don't know because I've tried to do this video a couple times, is I had intended not to buy any New Age stuff on this trip. Or at least not a lot, maybe just one thing if I bought anything at all. My husband, one of the days that I was kind of fatigued and had done a little outing with a part of our group, went with my boys to check out a couple places we had visited while they had slept instead, because the boys just conked out and my husband was really tired and elected just to stay behind with the kids. So I went ahead and went out. But then this time he had gone out with the kids and done some exploring that we had. So he went to a couple different stores that I didn't go to, and he found Vikings Tarot. And I was like, nowhere I went had any tarot or oracles or anything. He's like, no, my mom said that you went by this place. I'm like, no, 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 no. I would have remembered if I'd seen something like that. And it did. He ended up, the last day we were there before we had to get on the plane, we decided to hit a few places that they hadn't gotten to go visit before, or maybe it was, no, it was one of the days when we were leaving. And so he showed me the store that he had found these in, and he's like, you know, these can just be your souvenirs for the trip, because I know you didn't get much of anything. I think I got a shopping bag that had Aurora Borealis like background like this on it. No or unicorn, just the Northern Lights as the beautiful display on the bag. That was like my souvenir. It was the only thing I saw, and I was like, I'm getting that. Didn't even think about it. Everything else was like, maybe, nah. But then I saw these, and he's like, I'm like, ooh. He's like, well, if you really want them, they can be like your Yule gifts and everything. So I was able to get them. And honestly, these are like, when I talk about the sticker shock, this is in Icelandic currency, and that is in the hundreds, okay? These are like, but in American currency or what have you, this is only around $43, okay? But I could have gotten this deck on Amazon or locally, if I could find it locally, for about 22. Okay, so I've almost paid. I paid about double what I would have normally paid, which was not great. But it's my Yule gift, so there you go. I also got rune cards, which I kind of like cards because I like working intuitively with the scenes. And because I love runes, but I've used them more for spiritual work or spell work or protection type stuff, because it's just simple. You know, runes are simple, small drawings, but I love pictures because they convey some of the meaning, and so it's easier to remember all the meanings and how it could apply in a reading and stuff when I can see a picture that helps reflect the meaning of the rune. Whereas when I work with just a symbol, it's sometimes, because it's so much memorization, this symbol means this. And in runes and Oham, this symbol means a letter and a sound and several different meanings, or even a couple different ways of saying the Oham or rune symbol. So it's like a lot more complicated in my head, not as intuitive. But I really like how it's presented in this deck, so I will do a couple of videos for these two. And yeah, I think I better stop there because this is going to get way too long. So that's just an update. Hope you guys are all doing well. I will do one other video, and if I don't get the other one out, at least with this one, a happy Yule. And yeah, I had a couple other ideas of things I wanted to talk about, but I will do those in different videos. All right, see y'all. Talk with you later. Bye-bye.